We put them in order, and of course, death of a loved one or spouse was the most stressful of all these things. What they have in common are everything's the loss of something. Your divorce, it's the loss of your partner. It's the marriage is the loss of your independence. Your loss of a job, it can be horrific. We kind of experienced that, a lot of us, in the last recession. So these all can be extremely traumatic losses. And all of these things, there is a way to either hopefully prevent these things from happening or ease the pain and the burden if it does happen. So with divorce, there's marriage counselors and all sorts of things that to help people work on a marriage. With getting married, it's very difficult. You can hopefully have the support of your friends and family for a big life change, and your partner and all these. But there's still marriage counseling, a lot of things that can help you through this. Loss of a job, we can keep current on our education, and we can better our work ethic, and we can do a lot of things to prevent, from losing a job. Personal injury or illness, we can eat right and exercise and take care of ourselves, and to hopefully prevent things like this from happening. Death of a loved one, we can't prevent this, but we can definitely make that a lot less awful for our family if we take care of our arrangements in advance. So that's a huge reason for the pre-planning, is to ease that burden and take that away from your family and make it a much nicer process when it does happen. You can forward it. Mine's not working. Okay, so if I don't know how many have gone through this. I know some of you we've worked with, so I know you have. But what do we do? Who do we call? Who do we call? And how did this person want to be remembered? Where do you start? And these are things you don't want to come up with when you just lost someone. You want to have this information. You want to know what they wanted. You want to have a plan before this happens. So there's things that we go through life and we plan in advance for. Hopefully we make a plan to put our children through college. We plan for their weddings. We plan for our retirement. These are all things that we hope are going to happen in our lives, and we do things well in advance to prepare and make these things easier on us and better. We know we're not going to live forever, so why wouldn't we plan for that and make that a better experience for our family too? Make sense? So we've kind of keep in touch with the families we've helped over the 80 years we've been in business, and the people who have pre-planned, we go back and say, why was this so important? Why did you do it? What was the best reason? How did it help your family? What was it? And in order, it was very common throughout the country. The first one is to make those important decisions ahead of time, and so during that stressful part, you're not leaving that to your family. You're going to make all those decisions ahead of time, and then your decisions just need to be carried out. You're also getting what you want. So it's a awful thing to leave on someone, and some people don't think about it this way, but I hear over and over, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to let my kids do whatever they want, as if that's a gift. That's not a gift. When you leave that to your kids, now, my father's a good example. He wouldn't even let us pick up a dinner tab at age 30, at 40, but he had none of this planned, and I really believe that no one in our family knew that you could do this. So it's just sort of, you take care of it when it happens. So, and I do hear this, well, you just, do it. Well, he died unexpectedly, and then here we are going, oh my God, like the pain and shock of something so unexpected, and then, well, what do we do? And we didn't know what to do at all. And, well, does he want to be cremated or buried? Well, I don't know. He wouldn't talk about that, you know. So we did what we thought was right. We did what we thought he wanted. And now, 16 years later, we're all of us living going, do you think we did that right? Wow, I see so many other things done so much better than how we did it. Why didn't we do it? We didn't know. And I think, I can, till I'm blue in the face, say he would have never left that to us if he knew what that was, leaving that to us. So I do hear that quite often, and I say, you just don't understand. That's not a gift to let them do what they want, as if I don't care, I'll make it easy on them, let them do. That's not a gift, and that's not easy. And then the third reason is very beneficial to us right now, but in the end it turns out to be important, but not the most important, is financially. It's a lot less expensive to do your plans in advance for many reasons. We have, you lock in the prices, a huge reason. So and our prices double every 10 years. So you're going to make your arrangements today. You live another 20 years. It's going to double in 10 years and then double again in 20 years. And your family's going to come up with that huge expense in 24 hours. That's not a easy thing to do. You do it in advance. You lock in the prices. There's payment plans. You can, whatever makes sense for you. There's so many different reasons to financially that it's a big savings and a lot less burden on your family. So we break it down, the whole pre-planning process, into 4 steps. It's very simple. You're going to reflect, record, secure, and share. So the first step is reflect. So you're going to sit down and think, or you're going to sit down with your family and talk about it. How do I want to be remembered? What kind of service is going to speak to me about how I want to be remembered and how I want my life celebrated? Very simple. Do you want to be buried or cremated? And you'd be surprised how many people go home after today and they're sitting with their spouse saying, well, of course we're going to be cremated. And at that moment, for the first time today, you're going to find out, oh no, that's not what we never talked about it. I didn't know. So that's the number one thing where you should start and then move on from there. But you need to have these conversations and think about what you want, what's important, what's not important, what your priorities and your wishes are. And the first step, think about it. Address these issues instead of sweeping them under the rug. And then what kind of memorial do you want? Is there a family cemetery that you have, or if you haven't been to any of our cemeteries, I highly recommend we get together and let me give you a tour and show you, especially if cremation is your choice. There's so many people that say, oh, I thought that you only went to a cemetery if you're buried in a plot. They don't know about the cremation gardens that are spectacular, and they're all very different at all of our cemeteries. And what a way to remember someone, that just because they're cremated doesn't mean they don't, have a beautiful place in a cemetery with your name on it, which is a huge regret we didn't do with my father. And now he deserved his name on a plaque, and we didn't do that because we didn't know that was an option. And now it's too late. So I highly recommend, if that's your choice, that before you choose what you want to do, is to take a look at all of the cremation gardens in the cemeteries, because you'll be very surprised. And again, I went over our 4 locations: Fairhaven in Santa Ana, Westminster, Pacific View in Corona Del Mar, and Harbor Lawn Mount Olive in Costa Mesa. And they're all very, very different for a lot of reasons. We work with a lot of veterans. We have a burial benefits guide that is extremely helpful. It has back in the day when we worked with a veteran, we would go to the library and download all the forms that pertain to them, to all the benefits they get. And that evolved into this amazing book that if anybody here is a veteran or knows a veteran, we would love to get you one, so let me know. But it goes over everything that is a benefit, what's covered, and what's not. And it's very shocking to a lot of veterans. Oh, I'm as a veteran, everything's covered. It's not. So it's you still need to take care of a lot in advance. And then you're going to record it. You're going to put it in writing, and we couldn't be easier because we have a personal planning guide, and I have one for everybody. They're back at the table, so please pick one up before you leave. And if you have another family member, please pick one up for whoever needs one. But this walks you through about 90% of the questions and information we're going to need if you just lost a loved one and you're coming in and we're going to start from scratch and put it all together. Everything that goes on a death certificate, what kind of service you want, who do you want your pallbearers to be, what do you want to be wearing, do you want an open casket, closed casket, the people that are important in your life that want to be contacted, whether they're family members or you're in a social group with them, or your friends, neighbors. There's sections that you put all the people that are important to be contacted, which is very valuable for your children that know about these people but would never know how to contact them. There's a place to put kind of everything in your estate, which indicates how many death certificates we need to order. So every page in here serves a purpose. If you're military and we're going to do the military service, who are we going to hand the flag to? So very specific, detailed information in here, and a lot of times you fill it out, you know nothing's changing. We'll keep it in your file at the mortuary or cemetery, and then when the death occurs, we bring it out, and it's the wonderful thing to be able to hand to your family saying, you don't have to make these decisions, they're all right here. This is exactly what they wanted, and it's what you wanted in writing. So I want everyone to get that. So then you're going to secure it. You're going to fund it. You're going to pay for it. And like I was saying, it's a huge thing to lock in the prices. There's really nice payment plans with little to no interest. There's a really great payment options that we can go over in detail later. And then you're going to share. You're going to tell your family that you've taken care of this. So and that's all they need to know. Everyone gets a card that you keep in your wallet saying, I have my arrangements at Fairhaven or what have you. And that's all your family needs to know. If something happens, it's all taken care of. This is who you call. And you're going to share it. You're not going to keep it a secret because, I don't want to tell them they think something's wrong with me. That's not how it works. What happens is then when something happens, they call someone else, our information doesn't cross, and then they make arrangements somewhere else, and then they're going through your estate, closing it out, and then they see that's where the plot was after the fact. So it's very important to share your information with your family, and it's a gift you're giving them. It's not a scary thing. It shouldn't be looked at like that because it's not. So again, the three reasons: you're going to provide your family a peace of mind, you're going to ease the financial burden, and your services are going to reflect your wishes. So that's kind of in a nutshell all the benefits and the importance of pre-planning. Jill's going to talk after me, but she's a little humble, so I'm going to give her what she deserves. She's a celebrant, which has become very popular lately. It's very popular in other countries, but it's becoming more and more popular here. And she runs a service for a family and makes it a very personalized tribute to someone. And her work is amazing. She's had write-ups in the paper. She actually... if I'm doing a pre-planning for a person and they're very interested in this, She will go meet with a family and talk to them and their friends and coworkers, the important people in their life, and really get to know this person, and then put the service together. And every time I've coordinated this with her, I get a call from the family afterwards that says, it's like she knew him. It's really, I mean, it's an amazing thing that she does. That's a big part of the celebration of one's life is so important. If you have to put that together in 3 days, you're going to miss a lot, and you're not going to be present for the celebration of your loved one. You're going to be, did I do this and that and that and that? Oh, we should have done this, instead of everything's done, now you're putting it together. You're going to enjoy the celebration of someone's life much, much better if it's, and the best, I go to a lot of funerals because of what I do, and the best services I've seen and the best tributes have been those that were pre-planned. So thank you. If you have a question? Yes.
Are any of military cemeteries?
No, but we work with the military cemeteries in this area would be Riverside National and Miramar. And we do mortuary services, which is picking up from place of passing all the way to the internment at the cemetery. We do all that, and then but we work with the cemeteries to coordinate all that. And we do have military sections in all of our cemeteries, which you have to have a DD 214, and you and your whole family can do that if you don't like the idea of a national cemetery. Okay. Anybody else? So please come back to the table back here, and I really encourage everyone to get a planning guide. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so we're getting closer to the end. Last but not least, we're going to be having Jill Lloyd come up here. But before she comes, I'm going to tell you a little bit about her. So combine her lifelong passion for writing, 40-plus years in event development and public relations, and 35 years as a hospice volunteer into a new career in the funeral business as a service director and a celebrant. While she stays involved in all three interests, most of her time now is devoted to creating meaningful and personalized funeralized memorial services. As a celebrant, she serves as a storyteller, capturing the personality and uniqueness of every loved one she has to honor of memorializing. In addition, Jill helps facilitate the monthly grief support group gathering at Fairhaven Memorial Services in Mission Viejo, which is a community event open to anybody. Through her own losses she's experienced, it has taught her so much about the human experience, and especially that death can be our greatest teacher about life. Please welcome Jill to the stage.
Hi there. Familiar faces here. So here it is, a Saturday, and we're talking about grief and death, right? I'm sure you'd rather be doing other things. But I just want to laud the group that's putting this on, too, because this is an important subject. It's not something that we usually gather together on a Saturday to talk about. And I think it's important because regardless of our faiths or backgrounds, death is our universal truth. That's something we all share in, and that's what brings us together. So, and it's also about honoring our differences as well. So that's very important. And I like what Regina said about, just do you. And that's very important. So as unique as your grief, so is your story. I've got my notes written. I don't have any slides. That's a very old picture. You probably can tell. But anyway, I've got a lot of people in my head. I've got a lot of upcoming services, and so I interview a lot of people, and I really go deep with that. I meet in their homes. I go through their stuff. I go through letters and all that sort of a thing, yearbooks, whatever it is. I talk to coworkers, bosses, lost loves, and to get the story and so forth. And it's a very meaningful experience. And right now I'm doing a lot of them. So I have a lot of people in my head. So I had to write this out so I don't like crossover. But we're finding that increasingly families are moving away from traditional funerals and opting for more personal approach to remembering loved ones. And even during the pre-planning, as Tony mentioned, people are mentioning more specifically how they want to be remembered. So that gives them control over that. And instead of leaving that up to the families to decide or guess what they want. And it also results in more meaningful tributes. We only have one shot at that. We get up there and we have a tribute. Usually it's about an hour and so forth. And so we want to pack a lot of that in and make it meaningful. And so because we all come from different backgrounds, faiths, and so forth, sometimes that does dictate what we do at a service. And it's not to disregard that or overlook that, because religion and whatever anybody believes in can still play a part in this. But it's being driven a lot by our baby boomers, which I imagine a lot of you are, but we're a generation too that wants to be remembered in a certain way. And so there's more interest in creating funeral and memorial services to be very individualized and personalized. So we're seeing more services that do carry out the theme of one's life. If somebody was into Harleys and so forth, they may have their group of people ride in on motorcycles or a display and so forth. And the music might be different. You might not be playing Amazing Grace. It might be Bob Dylan or Joe Cocker and so forth, and whatever that person was involved in. Or they love sunflowers, so the whole chapel's filled with sunflowers. Or the baseball lover, you're going to kick it off with the Take Me Out to the Ball Game, things like that. And we've done a number of those things. Memorabilia on display. We just did a service with somebody who was a classic car enthusiast, and so they had his car out front as a display, and then some of his friends came and brought their cars as well to have on display at the mortuary. So really, there's no rules to any of that. And I would imagine we've all been to bad funerals before, and it just being very open about it. Having been in hospice for a long time, and because I'm a writer, and always just curious about people, I do try to get to know their story as I'm with them and as much as possible. And then I'll go to their funerals and I'll think, oh my gosh, what about Joe? They didn't really capture that. Like, he told me a story about this, and that would have been really cool because that's who he was. And the clergy might not even have pronounced their name right. I know we've all heard that. And I used to cringe when I'd go, and I never knew that what could be done about that. And so anyway, you'll find that a lot of people are moving in that direction. And when I heard about becoming a celebrant, which I'll elaborate on what exactly that is, I got excited about it because it kind of puts together, it has a lot of meaning to myself because I didn't really know a lot about some of my family members growing up. And so it has a lot of meaning to that. My mom died when I was 5, and that's a whole story in itself, but I didn't know about her. I really didn't even know what happened to her. And it wasn't until I was 35 that I got to know her. And so that's a delayed grief. When we talk about different aspects of grief, and many of you talked about that, and these stories that we've heard today, you know, they're heartbreaking, and they're all different. We all have a different grief story, and we deal with it. But knowing my mom's story eventually allowed me to actually really grieve her, because then I got to know who she was. Before, I didn't really even know. So along with the personal touches I mentioned that we do, comes the concept of storytelling and telling the person's life story. And storytelling is really the single most important tradition we have as humans. If you think about it, since the beginning of time, that's one of the ways we could communicate as humans. So human beings, as creatures of habit and tradition, we hand down lessons and knowledge from one generation to the next. We pride ourselves on leaving a legacy of knowledge for our descendants to utilize. And that includes a lot of things. You know, someone talked about cooking or recipes or doing those things. Those are things that get carried into the generations. And that's kind of up to us to do that. And then that's why in days of old, our ancestors stood around the fire and shared stories with each other. Survival depended on it. And so did the emotional well-being of the tribe. So there's a lot of power in the story. And since the beginning of time, it's been part of our human condition to stop and acknowledge the death of someone. And that too has evolved in how we honor our loved ones. So now it has become more valued, the purpose of storytelling. And we've found too that, and I have personally, that the use of storytelling, it helps families in many ways as they begin their grief journey, as they see and hear more about the differences their loved ones living and dying made among their family, friends, and community. It helps them further establish the significance and unique aspects of a life lived, and to give honor to a life lived and begin to figure out what that loss means to the ones left behind. And it's interesting, too, because a lot of times family members will hear stories because I've interviewed somebody, a friend or whatever, that they're hearing for the first time. So even if you know them or they're a family member, you might be learning something that you didn't know. And so it's quite interesting. And what I do, right, the service that I do, it becomes an archive for that person's life. They do get a written copy of that. And that's also something that can be referred to and passed down, shared, read again, and so on through the years. And so those of us that are left behind, we become the ambassadors of our loved one's story, and your story when that happens. So we're the rememberers, the ones who can take these stories and memories into the next generation as well as tell them often. And as long as you continue to share their stories, their loved ones live on. And I really was impressed with, Regina and then Tanya were talking about their stories and what they've done with their grief. That too becomes a story. Their grief story is also a story. It's a reflection on their losses, but it's something they've learned, and they're sharing that with each other. And so that even in itself has some power. And I was moved by everybody's story about that. I certainly can't imagine, some of these things that had happened, but I still can relate to the power of the story. And by sharing it, you can see there's meaning to it. Even if you can't relate exactly to what happened, but somebody sharing a story connects us. We become more human. That's what it's all about, in my opinion. So what is a celebrant, basically? So it's a formal term for a non-denominational, non-clergy professional, and who prepares and delivers funeral or memorial services, not closely linked to a religion or a belief or an afterlife. So we meet with the families. We do go through a certification program. I'm a certified celebrant. I don't know. Anyway, I have a badge and a certificate. I don't know what that means. If you Google that, you can go to Insight Celebrants is who we get certified through. And there's a directory all over the United States. So if you don't live here, you can go online to Insight Celebrants, look that up, or if you have loved ones that are interested in a celebrant, you can usually find one in your area. But the movement started, and Tony touched on it a little bit. It's very popular in Australia. About 85% of the services in Australia are done by celebrants. And so there was a gentleman in the Midwest, I think it was Oklahoma, his name is Doug Manning, and he was a funeral director, and he recognized that something was missing in the services, and families were just going to cremation. They weren't even wanting to do services, and he thought there's got to be something that we can do. So he heard about Australia, he went there, went to a lot of celebrant services there, and realized this could be something to bring into the United States. So he started the movement into the United States and then developed the training program and realized, too, that this was starting to build more interest in his community. People were enjoying the services more. They became more meaningful. So as Tony said, and I said, I do meet with the family. I go really in depth with them. And if you make it part of your pre-planning, I can meet with the family in advance. That does help. Not everybody's comfortable with that, but it can be very important. But the people that I talk to usually comes from the family. Whoever my contact is, I find out who was important in their life. I certainly can't interview everybody in their life, though I am doing a service that's coming up, and they've given me 25 people to interview. So that's why I'm a little scatterbrained right now. I've got all these people in my head I'm trying to keep straight. But they had a big life, so someone lives long, they have a lot of stories to tell. But I've talked to high school sweethearts, coworkers, childhood friends. I did a service a while ago for a young lady, and the family was kind of having a hard time. It was a very difficult situation, even telling her story. And I found a childhood friend who she stayed in touch with. These two girls stayed in touch with each other. And even after they went to junior high and high school together, were adults together, and even though they moved away from each other, they wrote letters to each other. Even after the internet and texting and all of that came, they still wrote letters back and forth to each other. And when I interviewed her, she said, yeah, we stayed in touch. This is very recent. We wrote letters to each other. And I said, did you keep them? And she said, yes. And I said, oh my gosh, send them to me. And it was beautiful because it was from junior high on. And she talked about, her first kiss, her first date, holding hands. So anyway, it was all through her adulthood. She told the story of her life. And so really, I got to be her voice even more than ever, because through her letters, I got to tell her story. And it was really through hers. It was a beautiful thing. And the family learned things there, too, like, how she had a fake ID. And you learn a lot of fun things like that. The family goes, wow, I didn't know that. So it's kind of fun, too, to do that anyway. And I'm just the messenger, so I just let them react and so forth. So think about the friendships and relationships about people, and they are key to who we are, who we choose to associate with. And they provide a different aspect of your life. And that does create a well-rounded life story. But it also shows us that our grief is as unique as the relationship we have with a person. And that's one thing that I wanted to bring up. We may lose the same person, but because of our relationship with them, our grief is unique. Plus, each person, too, has their own way of seeing the world. And that's been brought up several times today because we come from different backgrounds, different filters. I thought the paper folding thing that you did was great and funny. And I wish it was very funny. I would like to do it again sometime. Those of you that missed it, it was beautiful. But it really shows a lot how our brain works and we react to life in different ways. But that's the beauty of it. We're all different. And that's what we need to honor. And through the personal story, it's the same thing because we're all different. And our lives do matter. Everybody's life matters. So what we might have an idea about what someone is going through, we need to keep in mind that grief is a singular experience. We can share in the loss of the actual grief, but it is unique as the relationship and these other aspects I mentioned as far as background, faith, and so forth. We may often say, hey, I know exactly what you're going through, but we really don't. We can't. I couldn't say to Tanya, oh my gosh, I lost a friend too. I know exactly what you're going through. Well, her circumstances are totally different. There's no way I could understand that. I can only imagine it, and that is even hard to do. But I can just be there and just say, I'm sorry you had to go through that. That's about as much as I can do. Grief is not a contest, so it's important not to compare our grief. One's pain over another, regardless if you're the friend or the spouse. They are difficult situations. I know Tony talked about the 6 top fit losses and so forth. But no pain's more important than another's. And so I always believe in that. So honoring everybody for the relationship is important. So the process of storytelling also helps loved ones see that specialness of the relationship. And as a celebrant, I help draw that out in creating the service that provides a well-rounded picture of who that person was and will continue to be. And that's very important. So it's important to know that even though I do non-denominational service, I've worked alongside many religious clergy, Hindu priests, rabbis, the list goes on. We let them do their thing, and then I come in and do the personal story. So you can blend that. There may be certain religions, and I'm not going to mention any right now, that might not allow that, but most religions are very on board with this, and I work closely with them. I also work closely with the funeral home, the arranger who is doing that so that everything flows smoothly, even if they have a pre-planning. I'll be their liaison as much as possible with the funeral home, go through things like sorting through the music, military honors, dove butterfly releases, whatever you have, and help them organize and design the service so that it flows well and so forth. So I get involved with that as well. And that takes a lot of burden off of the families too. And while I'm not limited to the different funeral homes that I work for, and I do a lot of work for Fairhaven and so forth, which I'm very appreciative of, one of the things that I do like about Dignity is their motto, which is a life well celebrated. And that's really what we're doing, is celebrating a life for all that they were, and for better or for worse. So it's also really through one's challenges in life that we gain the most and learn the most. So when people tell their stories to each other and are heard, I think there's a bit of magic that happens. People bond, barriers dissolve, connections are made, trust increases, knowledge is transmitted, wisdom is shared, a common language is birthed. And often we find ourselves relating more to that person, having heard their story. But it also can give us something to take into our own lives, to enhance them, to do better, or see the world in a different way. I'm sure from hearing the stories today, you've learned something. I know I have. So the power of the story is endless. And at the end of it all, as Tony kind of said, if a family comes up to me and says, wow, how long did you know so-and-so? Or I felt like you brought them to life for a little while. Or I didn't know that about them, and I feel like I know him even more now because of you. So that gives meaning to what I do. And plus, when you can help a family put together a personalized service to honor their loved one, and in some cases be their voice, it can provide a lot of comfort to people too. And they also often get to see their loved one in an even bigger way. As I said, they hear stories they didn't know. And when you can kind of put it all together for them, they see the whole person. And that I don't know if I can say that there's healing that's involved, but it helps kind of put things in perspective. So think about how you want to be remembered, and this is something you can plan about. As I mentioned, you can put that into your pre-need. You can also request me if you like, and if I'm still around, I'll be happy to do that. And I also have a service coming up with that. I'm using an audio interview of the man we're honoring, and he was interviewed by his 8-year-old granddaughter several years ago. So that's one of the things, too, that not everybody even realizes, the stuff that they have that might be useful. So I ask about that as well. Let me see stuff. I go through yearbooks. I've used, love letters and so forth. So that's this tribute that we're going to be doing, in which this guy is talking about life issues, and she's a really great interviewer for an 8-year-old, and she asks him about his favorite memories, highlights of his life, and how he wants to be remembered. So we're playing that, and he basically is going to be doing his own tribute. So that's really a find. So I do a lot of digging with that. So as Tony mentioned, we do the grief support too. I help with that at Fairhaven. I like to, what Regina said too about Grieve by Doing. We do meet once a month. I have flyers back there for that. If you're interested in that, it's open to anyone. We do encourage people to come and open up if they don't want to. They can just sit there and listen. It varies for everyone. But we also do some Grieve by Doing things too. We've had movies. We've done Elvis Bingo. Who doesn't want to go to that, right? And we do things that are just social, where we're not talking about grieving and so forth. But we also have a holiday remembrance program, and that too is open to the public, where you can do a photo tribute of people that have been lost, as well as we include pets in that, because those are important in people's lives. And we have a little bit of a service. It's non-religious, and talk about that. But the thing that happens afterwards is actually the most powerful. We have a reception, and people sit down with each other. And I've had people say to me, I don't go to any holiday parties anymore. I hate it because, all I'm thinking about is so-and-so, and I can't really talk to anybody. But I love going to your party because you can sit down next to somebody and go, hey, who died in your family? And it's not awkward. And that's why they're there. They have that common thread. So you don't even have to know them. So I don't know how many holiday parties you can go to and do that. And talk about that and have that be okay. And also have it be kind of comforting. One thing I wanted to mention too about one of my friends that does this event, and there's information back there. It's a community event. It's free. And this was from, she started doing this after her 19-year-old son was killed many years ago, and the family would meet down on Laguna Beach, light some candles on the beach, have some chili, and do some things in his honor. And it started to build. They started inviting friends and neighbors to come and do it. People had lost loved ones, and they make these paper lanterns, put them along the beach at sunset, and now it's grown. And it's called Memory Jar. Jar is the initials of her son, and it's coming up. It's the 9th annual candle lighting to remember. And again, like I mentioned, like about the holiday party, you're right next to somebody else who's lost someone, and whether it's a similar loss, there's a connection there. And I know some of you have been here. I see some friends here that I know have joined there. And they're luminaries. You make them in honor of your loved ones, however many you want to do. You're sitting across from somebody talking about whoever you're honoring, and then everybody goes down at sunset. They put these lights in that change colors, and it lines the beach, and it's a beautiful thing. It's just a huge metaphor, because you realize you're not alone, and when you see how long these lanterns go, and you realize they all represent a loss, it's another thing that unifies us, and it's a beautiful thing. That's on Sunday, November 3rd, 4 to 6 p.m. at Heisler Park in Laguna Beach. There's little flyers back there if you'd like to attend that. It's free, beautiful event. So I wanted to mention that, another community thing that you might want to look into. And lastly, I just want to touch on a couple of things that we've kind of touched on a little bit about. Sometimes there's things that people say to us that are kind of offensive. They don't maybe really mean it, but they say things and they don't really help us. And I'm just going to mention some of the things not to say to someone who's grieving. You need to put this behind you. Everything happens for a reason. Others have it worse than you. Are you over her or him yet? She's been gone a long time, like a couple months. You're still young. You can always remarry. You never really got to know the baby, or you're still young. You can have more children. I know how you feel. Well, I think their intentions are good, but sometimes those are more hurtful. And here's a few things you can say, although there's never perfect words. We know that. I don't know how you feel, but I'm here to help in whatever you might need me. I wish I had the right words to say. Just know I care. I'm sorry you have to go through this. Let's go have some coffee. I will keep you and your loved one in my thoughts and prayers. I'm just a phone call away. I'm bringing dinner over. But most of all, being there is the most valued thing you can do. Words are really not needed. Many friends that might have come around when the funeral and when your loved one dies, and they say, hey, I'm always here for you, but then you kind of don't hear from them, and they don't really, they're awkward. It's an awkward situation. They're always afraid to bring up your loved one. But, you know, we're also the ambassadors, not just of their story, but once we go through losses, we become kind of ambassadors of grief. We kind of role models. We kind of have to let people know this is the way you do it. This is what's acceptable. And so we become kind of ambassadors of grief. I don't know if that sounds weird. But know that your presence is enough, and I'm sure that you know that if you've been through that. And that's the best thing you can do. And those of you who are on this grief journey, you do know that. And you just want to be acknowledged. And even if your loved one has died 10, 15, 20 years ago, you don't mind hearing their name. You don't mind being asked about it. My mom's been gone 55 years, and I've had subsequent losses after that, and every day I think of her. And I can say that for all my losses. So we never forget. So we don't want you to either, and that's most important. So again, thank you for putting on this event. I think these are important things to talk about. I think we should involve children and get them in talking about it too, something in the educational program. But anyway, thank you all.
And just wanted to thank all of you guys. If all the speakers can come back up to the stage. Again, every single one of our speakers today volunteered their time. We appreciate all of the information that you provided today. And as a token of our appreciation, I wanted to give you guys just a little something. Thank you. And we're missing Tony. Okay, all right, so then maybe we can, that's a Tony. So again, guys, thank you so much for your participation, for your help, your support, giving this wonderful information to the community. On behalf of Phenomenal Women, I really, really, really appreciate your guys' support in providing this valuable information today. If we can give them all a round of applause, it'd be awesome. Thank you. All right, so before we leave, there's, we said 1:30 and there's still a little bit of time, so there's a couple things that I wanted to do, if you guys don't mind, before we leave. First, I wanted to say thank you to our sponsors. SBC, really appreciate the ability to be able to use the space. We wouldn't be able to put this on without the help and support of SBC. Phenomenal Women, drlamorelle.com, the White Side Group, and Dignity Memorial. We really, really appreciate the help and support that you guys have been able to provide to be able to allow us to continue to do workshops and seminars on behalf of the community. And the next thing that we're going to do is we are going to ask that you fill out a survey to tell us how you felt about this event. We are trying to continue to offer a series of free events, and by getting your responses and your input and your feedback on what we can do better, what other topics that you'd like to see, we can continue to go out into the community and ask other sponsors and other businesses to help us continue to support and provide this information to the community. Could you slide to the next slide? We have a series of workshops that are actually scheduled for 2020. In January, our next one is healthy eating and living. And then we have things that are scheduled actually to the end of December. And I'm going to move over here because I cannot see. So in March, we are going to do a workshop on financial freedom. In May, we're going to be talking about healthy relationships. So I think, we've had a lot of discussion about that today as well. In August, we're going to be talking about conquering drug abuse. In October, spiritual meditation and prayer. And then December of 2020, giving back and being a larger part of the community. So by you today filling out these surveys, when you're done, we're going to give you 3 raffle tickets. We have quite a bit of prizes that we want to be able to raffle off. And again, this information is very important for us to be able to go out to the community, get more sponsors, and be able to additionally provide more of this content, as we continue with this series. When we're done, we have tables in the back, so all of our speakers will be able to provide more information. We also have a membership table for Phenomenal Women. We're inviting all of you guys today. If you'd like to join and become a member, you don't have to be a woman to be part of Phenomenal Women. We're calling all phenomenal men and women. And we would love your guys' participation in whether you want to become a member and get more involved in helping with events like this, or if you want to be a sponsor, or if you know other businesses that may be interested to be able to support us. So we're going to pass around the surveys. And when we're done, Kiara is going to provide you guys with 3 raffle tickets each, and then we'll do a raffle. And then one more kicker. I don't think we really got to see the demonstration very clearly across like what the magnitude of the energy it is that each of us have in each other, and what the importance is of us all coming together to be able to work together, whether it be for an individual goal or for a community goal. And so when we're done filling out these surveys, right before we do the raffle, I'd like us all to stand in a big circle so that we can all work together to light this up. And I hope, we're going to try this. There might be some dehydrated people because I know that most you've done is 10 people. Well, I've done more than 10 people, so we're gonna try to push the envelope today. Thank you, guys.